Have you ever caught yourself fantasizing about something in bed that your partner would never agree to? Maybe it's something that you used to do in a past relationship, or maybe it's something that you've never done before, but you know that the thought of it really gets you going. And then the guilt sets in. You wonder, is it wrong to think about this? Am I betraying my partner just by fantasizing? Or if I lean into the fantasy, will it make me want it even more and ruin my relationship? Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, or if you are new here, welcome. I'm Dr. Holly, a sex and relationship therapist, and today we're diving into one of the most common and most misunderstood aspects of sex, fantasy. I often get asked, is it okay to fantasize about things my partner isn't into? The short answer is yes, but the longer answer, that's what we're going to unpack today. And trust me, once you understand the science of fantasies, you'll see them in a whole new light. And stick around because toward the end, I'm going to share how fantasies can actually strengthen your relationship, even if your partner doesn't share them. So let's start with the big picture. Why do we even fantasize in the first place? Researcher Justin Lehmiller studied over 4,000 Americans in his book, Tell Me What You Want. And what he found is that almost everybody has sexual fantasies, and not just a few random ones. We're talking dozens, if not hundreds. And get this, most people never act on the majority of their fantasies. That's not because they're ashamed, it's because fantasies serve a purpose even when they stay in our heads. They let us explore, they let us try things on without the risk, they add excitement, they help us cope with stress, and basically your erotic imagination is like your brain's own little playground. But then comes the problem. What happens when what turns you on in your fantasy life doesn't line up with what's possible or comfortable in your real relationship? That's when people usually start worrying. I remember a client who once said to me, Holly, I keep fantasizing about this thing I did with an ex, but I know my husband would never go for it. Does that mean that I'm not satisfied? Does it mean that something's wrong with me? And maybe you can relate. But here's the thing, your fantasies don't always line up with your reality, and that's okay. In fact, psychologist Jack Morin, who wrote the book The Erotic Mind, would say that's exactly what makes them powerful. He called this the paradox of eroticism. The thing that excites us the most are often the things that live at the edges of what feels off limits. Think about it. So many of our hottest fantasies involve some element of tension, taboo, or risk. It might be role play, it might be a power dynamic, it might even be something that is completely impossible. That tension between I shouldn't and I want to is what gives eroticism its charge and what makes it feel spicy. But here's the kicker. Just because something excites you in your mind doesn't mean that you need it to feel satisfied in real life. Fantasies are not a to-do list, they're more like your erotic movie theater. You get to enjoy the show without ever buying a ticket to act it out. So where do we go from here? Let's dig a little deeper on why mismatched fantasies happen and what they mean for your relationship. First, let's bust the myth about sex drive. People love to talk about libido like it's some type of built-in biological urge like hunger or thirst, but research tells us that that's not true. Desire isn't a drive, it's an incentive motivation system. That means that your brain looks for incentives like novelty, arousal, or emotional connection to get you interested in sex. This is why your fantasies can show up at random times. Now, mismatched fantasies in a relationship usually bring up three fears. Fear number one, if I fantasize about this, does it mean that I don't love my partner? Fear number two, if I share it, will they think that I'm weird or broken? And fear number three, if I can't act on it, am I doomed to be unsatisfied forever? So let's take these one at a time. Number one, does fantasizing mean that you don't love your partner? Absolutely not. In fact, Lehmiller found that people in the happiest relationships were often the ones with the most active fantasy lives. Why? Because fantasies keep the erotic part of the brain alive. They give you novelty even when you've been with the same person for years. Number 2, my partner will think I'm weird. Now, that really all depends on how safe your relationship feels to share. Not every fantasy needs to be spoken out loud, but if you do choose to share, it helps to frame it not as a demand, but as a window into your erotic world. For example, you might say, sometimes I find myself fantasizing about power dynamics. I don't necessarily want to act it out, but I wanted you to know that this is part of what turns me on. That way, you're not making a direct demand, but just saying, hey, here's a part of myself that I'd like to share. Number 3, am I doomed to be unsatisfied if I can't act out my fantasy? Not at all, and this is where creativity comes in. Sometimes the exact scenario isn't possible, but you can capture the essence of the fantasy. The feeling of danger, the role play, the intensity, in ways that you both feel comfortable with. For example, you might have a fantasy about hooking up with the pool boy while your partner is away, and you might not be able to engage in a relationship outside of the one you're currently in, and you might not have a pool boy, and you might not even have a pool. But one way you can get creative is to kind of role play, if you and your partner are up for it, your partner being the pool boy. Get it? Get creative. Okay, let's pause here. I want to ask you, if you feel comfortable, what's one fantasy you've had that you've never told anyone? You don't have to write all the details in the comments, but if you felt open to share, I'd be happy to hear them. And if that doesn't feel good for you, I'd love to know, do you think fantasies are better kept private, or should you share them with your partner? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now here's where it gets interesting. Fantasies aren't just about sex. They can reveal deeper needs, like needs for freedom, validation, or intensity. Jack Morin describes fantasies as the royal road to eroticism. Just like Freud says that dreams were the royal road to the unconscious, Morin says that fantasies are a way into the hidden parts of your desire. Sometimes the things that you fantasize about aren't about the literal act. They're about the meaning underneath. For example, if you fantasize about being pursued, maybe it's about wanting to feel deeply desired. If you fantasize about control, maybe it's about wanting to release from all of the responsibility that you carry in your daily life. When you can decode the meaning behind your fantasy, it gives you incredible insight into your erotic wiring. And that can help you to create a more satisfying sex life, even if the fantasy never leaves your head. So what's the climax here, or the big takeaway? Fantasies are normal, they're healthy, and they don't mean that anything is wrong with you, and they also don't mean that your relationship is doomed if they don't share your fantasy. The key is learning how to honor your erotic mind while also respecting you and your partner's boundaries. Sometimes that means enjoying fantasies privately, sometimes it means sharing pieces of them to spark intimacy. And sometimes it means finding creative overlap that lets you to both play without stepping outside of what feels safe within your relationship agreement. To sum it up, fantasies are not confessions of betrayal, they're expressions of your erotic brain. The hottest fantasies often live in between the tension between what feels safe and what feels forbidden. You don't have to act on anything or everything that you imagine to have a satisfying sexual life. Open communication without pressure is the bridge that keeps intimacy alive. So next time you catch yourself fantasizing about something your partner isn't into, take a breath. Instead of panicking or judging yourself, get curious. Ask, what does this fantasy give me? How can I honor that need in a way that works for my real life? Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please do hit that subscribe button and follow along for more tips on sex, relationships, and mental health. And until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and remember, you deserve a healthy, happy, and pleasurable life. First, let's bust a myth. I can't.